The stagecoach rattled along the dusty Nevada trail, each jolt sending sharp pains through Lillian Vance's bruised ribs as she clutched her small valise. Her swollen lip throbbed with her rapid heartbeat, and she knew the bruises darkening her cheek would be impossible to hide. Tonopah awaited in the distance, a silver mining boomtown that promised her safety and a husband she'd never met. October 1902 had brought nothing but misfortune until she'd answered Quincy Ingram's advertisement seeking a bride. His letters had been straightforward but kind, describing his cattle ranch outside Tonopah and his need for a partner in life. After fleeing her cousin's brutal household in Philadelphia with barely enough for the journey west, Lillian prayed Mr. Ingram would honor their agreement despite her battered appearance. "First time to Tonopah, miss?" The elderly woman across from her asked, her kind eyes deliberately avoiding Lillian's injuries. Lillian nodded carefully. "Yes, madam, I'm to be married." The woman's smile faltered. "Well, congratulations to you. It's a rough place, but decent folk can make a good life there." The stagecoach crested a hill, and Lillian caught her first glimpse of Tonopah. The Nevada mining town sprawled in the valley below, wooden buildings clustered around the mines that had brought silver seekers from across the country. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the desert landscape. "Almost there, folks," the driver called back. "Tonopah coming up." Lillian's hands trembled as she gathered her belongings. The small mirror in her handbag confirmed her fears. Her face told a story she couldn't hide. The deep purple bruise along her left cheekbone and her split lip would be the first things Quincy Ingram noticed about his mail-order bride. The stagecoach pulled to a stop in front of the town's only hotel, dust billowing around the tired horses. Passengers began to disembark, and Lillian hesitated, searching the small crowd for a man matching Mr. Ingram's description, tall with light brown hair. She stepped down gingerly, her legs stiff from the journey. The desert air was dry and cool as evening approached, so different from Philadelphia's damp autumn chill. She stood awkwardly beside the stagecoach, clutching her valise with both hands. "Miss Vance." A deep voice spoke from behind her. Lillian turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. Quincy Ingram stood before her, taller than she'd imagined, his broad shoulders filling out a clean but worn cotton shirt. His light brown hair was neatly trimmed, though his face bore several days' worth of stubble. He was not classically handsome, but his features were strong and honest, his eyes a startling blue beneath the brim of his worn hat. Those eyes widened when they took in her battered face, and Lillian felt heat rise to her uninjured cheek. She looked down quickly, shame overwhelming her. "Miss Vance," he repeated, his voice softer now. A calloused finger gently tilted her chin upward, forcing her to meet his gaze. His expression had hardened, jaw tight with barely contained fury. "No one hurts what's mine," Quincy whispered, the quiet intensity of his words sending a shiver down her spine. Lillian's eyes widened. "Mr. Ingram, Quinn," he corrected gently, dropping his hand. "We're to be married. Call me Quinn." He glanced around the busy street, then back to her face. "Are you injured elsewhere? Do you need a doctor?" "No," Lillian replied quickly. "Just bruises, they'll heal." Quinn nodded once, his expression still tight. "Let's get you settled. We'll stay at the hotel tonight." "The ranch is a half-day's ride and you need rest." He reached for her valise. "May I?" Lillian relinquished her grip on the bag, noticing how small it looked in his hand. "Thank you." "I've arranged for the minister tomorrow morning if that suits you," Quinn said carefully as he guided her toward the hotel entrance. "Unless you'd prefer to wait, tomorrow is fine," Lillian interrupted, summoning her courage. "I've come to honor our arrangement, Mr. Ingram Quinn." "If you're still willing." He stopped at the hotel steps, studying her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I am. But first, I'd like to know who did this to you." Lillian looked away. "It doesn't matter anymore. I'm here now." "It matters to me," he said quietly. The hotel lobby was mercifully quiet as Quinn checked them in, requesting separate rooms. The clerk handed over 2 keys, his curious gaze lingering on Lillian's face before Quinn's hard stare sent him looking elsewhere. "You'll have privacy," Quinn assured her as they climbed the narrow staircase. "I've arranged for a bath to be sent up and dinner in your room if you'd prefer not to come down." Gratitude washed over Lillian. "Thank you. I would appreciate that." At her door, Quinn handed over the key and her valise. "I'll be next door if you need anything. Rest well, Miss Vance." "Lillian," she corrected softly, "or Lily if you prefer." A small smile touched his lips. "Lily, it suits you." He hesitated. "Tomorrow, before we speak our vows, we should talk. There are things you should know about me, about the life I'm offering." "And things you should know about me," Lillian agreed, her hand unconsciously touching her bruised cheek. "Get some rest," Quinn said. "We'll have time tomorrow." He tipped his hat slightly and turned toward his own room. Lillian slipped inside and leaned against the closed door, exhaling slowly. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and window overlooking the main street. For the first time in weeks, she felt something dangerously close to hope. The promised bath arrived shortly after, and Lillian sank gratefully into the warm water, allowing it to soothe her aching body. The maid who brought her dinner tactfully avoided staring at her injuries, simply setting down the tray with a murmured "Evening, madam," before departing. Alone again, Lillian ate slowly, savoring the simple meal of stew and fresh bread. Tomorrow she would become Mrs. Quincy Ingram. The thought no longer terrified her as it had during the long journey west. Quinn's quiet strength, and the gentle fury in his eyes when he saw her injuries, had awakened something inside her, a flicker of trust she'd thought extinguished forever. Morning arrived with golden light spilling through the thin curtains. Lillian rose early, unpacking her one good dress, a modest blue calico that had somehow survived the journey uncrumpled. She dressed carefully, arranging her dark hair as neatly as possible, painfully aware that no amount of preparation could hide the bruises on her face. A soft knock at her door announced Quinn's arrival precisely at 8 o'clock. He wore a clean shirt and dark pants, his face freshly shaved. The sight of her injuries in daylight made his jaw tighten briefly before he forced a smile. "You look lovely," he said sincerely. "Thank you," Lillian replied, surprised by the genuine warmth in his voice. "Before we go to the minister," Quinn said, closing the door partway for privacy but leaving it properly ajar, "I promised you a conversation." Lillian nodded, perching on the edge of the bed while Quinn took the room's only chair. "I want you to know what you're agreeing to," he began. "My ranch is modest 600 acres, 40 head of cattle, and a small horse breeding operation. The house isn't fancy, but it's solid. 2 bedrooms, a decent kitchen. I built it myself." "It sounds lovely," Lillian said. "It's isolated," Quinn continued. "Town is a half-day's ride in good weather. The nearest neighbor is 5 miles away." He paused. "Some women find the loneliness difficult." "I'm not afraid of isolation," Lillian said quietly. "Sometimes people are more dangerous than solitude." Quinn's eyes darkened. "Yes, they can be." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I want to be clear, Lily. I'm offering you a partnership. I need a wife, but I want one who's willing, not trapped. If you wish to delay our wedding or call it off entirely, I'll understand. I'll even help you get established somewhere else." Lillian stared at him, stunned by his offer. "Why would you do that?" "Because you've clearly been through enough." His voice hardened. "I won't add to your suffering. And if I choose to honor our arrangement, Lillian asked, then I'll be a good husband to you, Quinn promised. I can't offer wealth or fine things, but I can promise respect, fidelity, and protection. Lillian took a deep breath. Then I believe it's my turn for honesty. She clasped her hands tightly in her lap. My parents died last year. I went to live with my cousin in Philadelphia. He was not a kind man. Quinn's expression darkened, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue. When I refused his advances, he became violent. Lillian gestured to her face. This was my punishment for denying him. I fled with only what I could carry and the money I'd saved from teaching. She met his gaze steadily. I have no dowry, Mr. Ingram, only myself. That's more than enough, Quinn said quietly. And your cousin believes I've gone to stay with a school friend in Boston. Lillian's voice trembled slightly. He doesn't know I've come west. Quinn nodded slowly. Good, then he won't follow. He stood, offering his hand. I believe we have an appointment with Reverend Walsh, if you're still willing. Lillian placed her hand in his, feeling the strength and calluses from years of ranch work. I am. The ceremony was brief and simple, conducted in the small white church at the edge of town with only the Reverend's wife as witness. Lillian spoke her vows clearly despite her nervousness, and Quinn's steady voice never faltered. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn's kiss was gentle, barely a brush against her uninjured cheek. Mrs. Ingram, he said softly, and Lillian felt an unexpected warmth at her new name. They left the church hand in hand, stepping into the bright Nevada sunshine as husband and wife. Quinn led her to the general store, where he purchased supplies for the ranch, and insisted she select fabric for new clothing and any personal items she needed. I can't afford fine things, he said apologetically as she admired a bolt of pretty calico, but whatever you need, it's yours. I don't need fine things, Lillian assured him, selecting practical items with occasional small luxuries that made Quinn smile. Their wedding night would be spent at the ranch, Quinn explained as they loaded their purchases into his wagon. It's a long ride, but I thought you might prefer your first night as my wife to be in our home, not a hotel room. Lillian appreciated his thoughtfulness. I would prefer that, thank you. The journey to the ranch took most of the day, winding through desert landscape that gradually gave way to more fertile valley land. Quinn pointed out landmarks and boundaries, explaining aspects of ranch life as they traveled. Lillian found herself relaxing in his company, his deep voice and straightforward manner soothing her frayed nerves. There it is, Quinn said as they crested a hill in late afternoon. Ingram Ranch. Lillian leaned forward, taking in her new home. The ranch house stood on a gentle rise, larger than she'd expected, with a wide porch wrapping around two sides. Several outbuildings clustered nearby, and a corral held a half-dozen horses. Beyond, cattle grazed on the autumn golden grass that stretched toward distant mountains. It's beautiful, she said honestly. Quinn's pleased expression warmed her. Welcome home, Lily. He helped her down from the wagon, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. Threshold tradition, he explained with a small smile, carrying her up the porch steps and through the front door before setting her gently on her feet. The house was clean and simply furnished with solid, handmade pieces. The main room held a stone fireplace, comfortable chairs and bookshelves that surprised Lillian with their variety of volumes. You like to read? She asked, running her fingers along the leather spines. Winter nights are long, Quinn replied. Books help pass the time. He showed her through the house kitchen with its large cast iron stove, the small study where he kept ranch records, and finally, the two bedrooms. This one's mine, ours, he amended, showing her the larger room with its sturdy bed and chest of drawers. But this one is also yours if you prefer. He opened the door to the second bedroom. I thought you might want your own space, at least until we know each other better. Lillian turned to him, touched by his consideration. Thank you. Quinn nodded, suddenly appearing uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. I'll bring in our things and see to the horses. Make yourself at home. Left alone, Lillian explored the house more thoroughly. The kitchen was well stocked, the pantry containing preserves, flour, coffee, and other staples. Everything was neat and organized, speaking to Quinn's methodical nature. She was examining the stove when Quinn returned with their purchases. Are you hungry? She asked. I could prepare something. You don't need to cook tonight, Quinn said. Mrs. Walsh, the Reverend's wife, sent a long supper for us. He set a covered basket on the table. She said it was a wedding gift. They ate at the kitchen table, the awkwardness of new marriage hanging between them. As darkness fell, Quinn lit lamps around the house, the warm glow making the rooms feel more welcoming. I should check on the stock before turning in, Quinn said after they'd cleared away the meal. I won't be long. Lillian nodded, suddenly nervous about the night ahead. While he was gone, she unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses in the wardrobe beside Quinn's clothes. The domestic intimacy of their garments sharing space made her cheeks warm. She was brushing her hair at the small vanity when Quinn returned. He paused in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. I can sleep in the other room tonight, he offered quietly. Your injuries, they're healing, Lillian interrupted. And we are married. Quinn crossed the room slowly, stopping behind her. Their eyes met in the mirror's reflection. Marriage on paper doesn't entitle me to anything you're not ready to give, Lily. Her breath caught at his words. I didn't come all this way to be a wife in name only. Quinn's large hand gently touched her shoulder. There's time. We have our whole lives ahead of us. She turned to face him. I'm not afraid of you, Quinn. Good, he said softly. I never want you to be. That night, Quinn was true to his word, gentle, patient, and attentive. When Lillian flinched once at an accidental touch against her bruised ribs, he immediately pulled back, his expression troubled. Did he? Quinn began, then stopped himself. Never mind. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. Lillian touched his face, surprising herself with the boldness. My cousin didn't he never, she swallowed. The bruises are from his fists, nothing more. I got away before. She couldn't finish. Relief washed over Quinn's features, followed by rage that he quickly contained. He'll never touch you again. I promise you that. They fell asleep with a careful space between them. But when Lillian woke in the night from a nightmare, Quinn's arm wrapped protectively around her, drawing her against his solid warmth until her trembling subsided. The following weeks brought Lillian into the rhythm of ranch life. She learned to cook on the temperamental wood stove, discovering that Quinn was grateful for any meal that wasn't his own basic cooking. The bruises on her face faded, and with them, some of her wariness. Quinn was often busy from dawn until dusk with ranch work, but he always made time to teach Lillian whatever she wanted to learn: riding, caring for the chickens he kept, even simple ranch tasks. She discovered she enjoyed the company of the horses, particularly a gentle mare named Daisy that Quinn designated as hers. She's steady, he explained, helping Lillian saddle the horse. Won't spook easy, good for learning. November brought colder weather, and Quinn spent long days preparing the ranch for winter. Lillian grew concerned when he returned each evening exhausted, often working by lantern light in the barn long after dark. You need help, she said one night as they sat by the fire. Someone to work with you, Quinn shrugged. Hired hands are expensive and good ones are hard to find. Most men prefer the mine's quicker money. What about a partner, someone who could invest in the ranch? No one's lining up to partner with a small spread like ours, Quinn said, but his use of ours warmed Lillian's heart. As December approached, Quinn rode into Tonopah for supplies, returning with not only necessities but also small gifts for Lillian: a warm woolen shawl, peppermint sticks, and a book of poetry. "Early Christmas," he explained with a shy smile that transformed his usually serious face. "In case the weather turns bad later this month." That night, their lovemaking took on a new dimension, less careful, more passionate. Afterward, as they lay entwined beneath the heavy quilts, Quinn traced the curve of her cheek where the bruises had been. "I keep thinking about him," he admitted quietly. "The man who hurt you." Lillian stiffened. "Why?" "Because he's still out there." Quinn's voice hardened. "Men like that don't change, Lily, they just find new victims." "He can't hurt me anymore," Lillian said. "I'm safe here with you." Quinn pulled her closer. "Yes, you are, and you always will be." The first major snowfall came mid-December, blanketing the ranch in white. Confined to the house by the weather, Quinn and Lillian spent long evenings by the fire, talking more openly about their pasts. Lillian spoke of her childhood in Philadelphia, her parents' deaths from influenza, and her brief time as a schoolteacher before being forced to live with her cousin. Quinn shared stories of growing up in Missouri, losing his parents young, and heading west at 17 to make his own way. He'd worked cattle drives and as a ranch hand before saving enough to buy his own small spread 5 years ago. "I never thought I'd marry," he confessed. "Ranching is a hard life for a woman. But last year, when the winter was so long and the silence in this house nearly drove me mad, I realized I needed more than just this land." "And so you advertised for a wife," Lillian said with a small smile. Quinn nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "I'm not good with fancy words. I just wrote honestly about what I could offer." "Your honesty is what drew me to your letter," Lillian told him. "The others were full of grand promises that rang false. Yours felt real." Christmas arrived with clear skies, allowing them to ride into Tonopah for Christmas services. Lillian noticed the curious glances from townspeople, most seeing her for the first time since her arrival with Bruises. Quinn kept her close, his hand protectively at the small of her back. After church, they were approached by an older couple Quinn introduced as the Millers, who owned the neighboring ranch. "So this is the bride we've heard about," Mrs. Miller said warmly, her keen eyes taking in Lillian's now healed face. "We've been hoping to meet you, my dear." "Quinn keeps you hidden away out there," Mr. Miller added with a good-natured chuckle. "Can't say I blame him." "The winter preparations kept us busy," Quinn explained, "but we'd be happy to have you visit when the weather permits." Mrs. Miller insisted they join the Millers for Christmas dinner at the hotel, and Lillian enjoyed the company after months of relative isolation. Mrs. Miller was particularly kind, offering friendship and advice about ranch life that Lillian gratefully accepted. "You've changed him," Mrs. Miller whispered when the men were deep in conversation about cattle prices. "I've known Quincy Ingram for 5 years and I've never seen him smile so much." Lillian blushed. "He's a good man." "The best," Mrs. Miller agreed, "but lonely. Until now." She patted Lillian's hand. "You're good for him." January brought heavy snows that isolated the ranch for weeks. Lillian discovered pregnancy symptoms shortly after the new year, but kept the news to herself. Uncertain and slightly frightened by the prospect of childbirth, so far from town. Quinn noticed her morning illness despite her attempts to hide it. "You're sick," he said one morning, finding her pale and trembling after emptying her stomach. "I should get the doctor." "It's not possible in this weather," Lillian said, "and it's not necessary." "Lily," Quinn's voice was gentle but firm, "tell me what's wrong." She met his eyes. "I believe I'm going to have a baby." Quinn froze, staring at her with such intensity that Lillian felt her heart race. Then, to her astonishment, he dropped to his knees before her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pressing his face against her still flat stomach. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby." Tears filled Lillian's eyes at his reaction. "You're pleased?" Quinn looked up, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "More than I can say." He rose, cupping her face in his hands. "But you're right, we need a doctor. As soon as the pass clears, we'll go to town." The opportunity came sooner than expected when a sudden thaw in late January made the trails passable. Quinn insisted on taking Lillian to Tonopah, where the town doctor confirmed her pregnancy and estimated a late summer birth. "You'll need help at the ranch," the doctor advised Quinn. "The summer heat is no time for a woman in her condition to be managing alone." Quinn nodded seriously. "I'll arrange something." His solution surprised Lillian. Upon returning to the ranch, Quinn showed her advertisements he'd drafted for both a ranch hand and a housekeeper. "We can afford it now," he explained. "The cattle prices are good, and the horse I've been training for the mine owner sold for more than I expected." "Are you certain?" Lillian asked, touched by his concern for her welfare. "I won't risk you or our child," Quinn said firmly. "Not for pride or savings." By February, Quinn had hired 2 helpers: Luis Ramirez, an experienced ranch hand from Texas, and Mrs. Abigail Foster, a widow from Sacramento who arrived to help with household duties. Mrs. Foster was a godsend, taking charge of the heavier domestic work while teaching Lillian valuable skills for managing the growing household. As spring arrived, Lillian's pregnancy became more visible, and Quinn grew increasingly protective. He insisted she rest frequently and enlisted Mrs. Foster to ensure Lillian didn't overexert herself. His tenderness touched Lillian deeply, especially when he spent evenings reading aloud to her or rubbing her aching feet. "I never thought I could be this happy," Lillian confessed one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "When I left Philadelphia, I only hoped for safety." Quinn took her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "And I only hoped for companionship." His other hand rested on her growing belly. "We've found so much more." April brought a letter that shattered their peace. Lillian recognized her cousin's handwriting immediately, and her hands trembled so badly that Quinn noticed from across the room. "Lily, what is it?" She couldn't speak, simply holding out the unopened envelope. Quinn took it, his expression darkening as she explained whose handwriting addressed it. "How did he find you?" Quinn asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I don't know," Lillian whispered. "I was so careful." Quinn stared at the letter for a long moment. "Do you want to read it?" Lillian shook her head. "No. Whatever he has to say, I don't want to hear it." Without hesitation, Quinn walked to the fireplace and tossed the unopened letter into the flames. They watched together as the paper blackened and curled, the thread it represented turning to ash. But the letter's arrival cast a shadow over their happiness. Quinn became even more protective, insisting that Lillian never be alone when he was away from the house. He began carrying his revolver whenever he rode the property boundaries, and Lillian often caught him scanning the horizon with wary eyes. "Do you think he'll come?" she asked one night, voicing the fear that had grown between them. "I don't know," Quinn admitted, "but if he does, he'll regret it." In May, a second letter arrived, this one addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Quincy Ingram. Quinn read it first, his expression grave. "He's coming to Tonopah," he told Lillian. "Says he wants to ensure your welfare and discuss your hasty departure." Fear clutched at Lillian's heart. "Quinn, he's dangerous." "So am I," Quinn replied, his voice hard. "When it comes to protecting my family." They decided that confrontation was inevitable but would happen on their terms. Quinn rode into Tonopah the next day, speaking with both the sheriff and Reverend Walsh about the situation. The sheriff promised to keep an eye on any newcomers from the east, while Reverend Walsh agreed to attest to their proper marriage and Lillian's good standing in the community if needed. June brought sweltering heat, and the arrival of Edward Vance to Tonopah. Word reached the ranch through Mr. Miller, who had seen the well-dressed Easterner asking questions about the Ingrams in town. "He's staying at the hotel," Mr. Miller reported. "Told folks he's your concerned cousin, come to check on your welfare after receiving no word for months." Lillian's hands protectively cradled her 7-month pregnant belly. "He's lying. He never cared for my welfare." Quinn's expression was resolute. "It's time to end this. Tomorrow we'll go to town." "I should stay here," Lillian protested, fear making her voice shake. "In my condition, you'll be safer with me," Quinn insisted. "And the town needs to see you happy, healthy, and clearly well cared for. It will undermine whatever tales he's spinning." The next morning they dressed in their best clothes. Quinn helped Lillian into the wagon, his hands lingering protectively over her rounded stomach before he carefully tucked a light blanket around her against the morning chill. The drive to Tonopah was tense, Quinn unusually silent as his thoughts clearly centered on the coming confrontation. They arrived mid-morning, the town already busy with miners changing shifts and shopkeepers opening their doors. Quinn helped Lillian down from the wagon, keeping her hand firmly in his as they walked toward the hotel. Edward Vance was leaving the hotel just as they approached. Lillian's breath caught at the sight of her cousin, impeccably dressed as always, his handsome face set in lines of concern that she knew were entirely false. He spotted them immediately, his practiced smile faltering slightly when he saw her condition. "Lillian, my dear cousin," he called, approaching with outstretched hands. "Thank heavens you're safe. I've been so worried." Quinn stepped slightly forward, positioning himself between Lillian and her cousin. "Mr. Vance, I'm Quincy Ingram, Lily's husband." Edward's smile tightened. "Ah, the rancher. Yes, I've heard about you." His gaze moved to Lillian, eyes narrowing at her obviously pregnant state. "Cousin, you look well, though I must say your hasty departure caused quite a stir. Your letter was so vague." "I left no letter," Lillian said, her voice steadier than she felt. Edward's expression hardened momentarily before smoothing into false concern. "Perhaps in your distressed state you forgot. No matter, I'm here now to escort you home." "She is home," Quinn said, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable warning. "Lily is my wife, and this is where she belongs." Edward's facade slipped, revealing the coldness Lillian remembered all too well. "I think we should discuss this privately. Family matters, you understand." "We understand perfectly," Lillian replied, drawing strength from Quinn's solid presence beside her. "There is nothing to discuss. I left Philadelphia of my own free will to marry Quinn. I am happy here." "Happy?" Edward scoffed, his voice lowering as he stepped closer. "Look at you, heavy with child in this God-forsaken desert, married to a man who can barely provide." "That's enough," Quinn interrupted, his hand moving instinctively toward his holstered revolver before he checked himself. "You should leave, Mr. Vance. Return to Philadelphia and forget you ever had a cousin named Lillian." Edward's face flushed with anger. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, rancher." "I have connections in this territory, and I have 30 years' reputation in this town," interrupted Sheriff Dawson, who had approached unnoticed during their conversation. "Everything all right here, Quinn?" "Just explaining to Mr. Vance that his cousin is happily married and settled here," Quinn replied, not taking his eyes off Edward. The sheriff nodded, studying Edward with obvious suspicion. "That right, Mrs. Ingram? You're happy with your situation?" "Very happy, Sheriff," Lillian confirmed. My cousin's concern is unnecessary." Edward's gaze darted between them, calculating. "Well, naturally I'm relieved to find you well, Lillian, though I still don't understand why you left so suddenly without a proper goodbye." Lillian's hand unconsciously rose to her cheek, where the bruises had long since faded. The gesture wasn't lost on Quinn or the sheriff. "Perhaps," Sheriff Dawson said carefully, "Mrs. Ingram had her reasons for leaving quickly." "Indeed," Edward replied smoothly. "Family misunderstandings, I'm sure." "Mr. Vance," Quinn said, his voice deceptively calm, "the stagecoach leaves for Carson City this afternoon. I suggest you be on it." Edward's smile vanished entirely. "Are you threatening me?" "Not at all," Quinn replied. "Just offering travel advice." He placed his hand protectively on Lillian's back. "We're finished here, Lily. Let's go." As they turned to leave, Edward called after them, "This isn't over, Lillian. A hasty marriage to a Western nobody doesn't change the fact that you're a Vance. Your place is in Philadelphia." Quinn stopped, turning slowly to face Edward again. His expression was deadly calm as he approached the shorter man, stopping inches away. "No one hurts what's mine," Quinn said, his voice so low that only Edward and Lillian could hear it. "If you ever come near my wife again, if you ever threaten her peace of mind, I will end you. That's not a threat, it's a promise between gentlemen." Edward paled, taking an involuntary step backward. "You can't." "I can and I will," Quinn interrupted. "The desert is vast, Mr. Vance. Men get lost out here all the time." He smiled, the expression chilling in its complete lack of warmth. "Never to be found again." Sheriff Dawson cleared his throat. "Everything's still all right, Quinn." "Perfect, Sheriff," Quinn replied, stepping back. "Mr. Vance was just telling me he'll be on this afternoon's stagecoach." Edward looked between the two men, recognizing the unified front before him. "Yes," he said finally. "I believe my business here is concluded." Quinn nodded once, then returned to Lillian, who had watched the exchange with wide eyes. "Let's get you something to eat, Mrs. Ingram. Our son is probably hungry." They walked away from Edward, Quinn's arm protective around Lillian's waist. "Do you think he'll leave?" she whispered. "He will," Quinn said confidently. "The sheriff will make sure of it." They spent the day in town, deliberately visible as they visited shops, spoke with friends, and dined at the hotel restaurant. Several times, Lillian caught glimpses of Edward watching them from a distance, his expression darkening each time he saw Quinn's attentive care of her. Late afternoon found them at the stagecoach depot, ostensibly to purchase a newspaper but really to ensure Edward departed. The sheriff was already there, casually leaning against a post as the driver prepared the team. Edward appeared moments before departure, carrying a single valise. His eyes narrowed when he saw Quinn and Lillian waiting. "Come to see me off, cousin?" he asked bitterly. "To ensure you go," Lillian replied honestly. Edward laughed humorlessly. "You've changed, Lillian. The West has hardened you." "No," she corrected him. "It's healed me." The stagecoach driver called for passengers to board. Edward picked up his bag, then paused, looking directly at Quinn. "You win for now, rancher, but Philadelphia society has a long memory, and Lillian has obligations she's neglecting." "The only obligations my wife has are to her family, me, and our child," Quinn replied evenly. "Safe journey, Mr. Vance." They watched as Edward boarded the stagecoach, his rigid back and tight shoulders betraying his fury. Only when the coach disappeared in a cloud of dust did Lillian finally relax, sagging slightly against Quinn's side. "It's over," she whispered. "Yes," Quinn agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "He won't bother us again." July passed in sweltering heat, Lillian's pregnancy advancing to its final stages. Quinn rarely left her side, delegating ranch work to Lewis whenever possible. Mrs. Foster fussed over Lillian constantly, preparing special teas and meals to keep up her strength. First babies often come late, Mrs. Foster assured her when August arrived with no sign of labor, especially in this heat. The baby finally made his arrival on August 15th, after a long labor that left Quinn pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door. Mrs. Foster and the midwife from town attended Lillian, only allowing Quinn in when his son's lusty cries filled the house. "You have a son, Mrs. Foster announced, ushering him into the room where Lillian lay exhausted but radiant, a tiny bundle in her arms. Quinn approached the bed reverently, his usual confidence replaced by awe as he gazed down at his wife and child. "Lily," he whispered, unable to find other words. "Would you like to hold your son?" Lillian asked softly. Quinn nodded, carefully taking the swaddled infant. The baby blinked up at him with dark blue eyes, tiny fingers curling reflexively around Quinn's much larger one. "He's perfect," Quinn said, his voice rough with emotion. "Just like his mother." They named him William James Ingram William for Lillian's father and James for Quinn's. "Baby will thrive despite the summer heat, growing stronger each day." Quinn proved to be a devoted father, often carrying his son against his chest as he worked around the ranch house, talking to the infant as though he understood every word. "He's telling him all about cattle breeding," Lillian told Mrs. Foster with amusement one afternoon as they watched Quinn pacing the porch with Will, deep in one-sided conversation. "As if a 6-week-old needs to know the difference between Herefords and Angus." Mrs. Foster smiled. "It's not about what he's saying, dear. It's about the bond they're forming." Autumn brought cooler temperatures and increased prosperity as Quinn's cattle fetched good prices at market. With the additional income, he hired a second ranch hand, allowing him more time with Lillian and Will. "I never want to miss him growing up," Quinn explained when Lillian expressed surprise at his reduced work schedule. "The ranch will always be there, but he'll only be small once." As Christmas approached, bringing Will's first holiday, Quinn surprised Lillian by suggesting they host dinner for the Millers, the Walshes, and their ranch employees. "This house should be filled with people," he explained. "It was too quiet for too long." The Christmas gathering was everything Lillian could have wished for: warm, joyful, and filled with friendship. As she watched Quinn showing off their son to their guests, his face alight with pride, she felt tears prick her eyes at how far they'd both come in just 1 year. Later that night, after their guests had departed and Will slept peacefully in his cradle, Quinn and Lillian sat before the fire, enjoying a rare moment of quiet together. "I have something for you," Quinn said, reaching into his pocket. He handed Lillian a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside, she found a delicate silver locket. When opened, it contained a tiny photograph of Will on one side and Quinn on the other. "So we're always with you," Quinn explained as he fastened it around her neck. "Even when we're apart." Lillian touched the locket gently. "It's beautiful." "But I have nothing so fine for you," Quinn smiled, drawing her into his arms. "You've given me everything I never knew I wanted: a true partner, a son, a family." He kissed her softly. "You arrived with bruises on your face and fear in your heart, but you were still the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." "I was terrified you'd send me away," Lillian admitted. "That my bruises would disgust you. They only made me want to protect you more," Quinn said. "When I said no one hurts what's mine, I meant it then and I mean it now. You and Will are my everything, Lily. I'll spend my life making sure you're safe and happy." "I am happy," Lillian assured him, nestling against his chest. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible." 5 years later, 1907, the Ingram Ranch had prospered beyond Quinn's most optimistic hopes. The original house had been expanded, adding rooms for their growing family. 3-year-old Charlotte had joined Will 2 years earlier, and baby Thomas had arrived just 6 months ago. Lillian stood on the porch, watching Quinn teaching Will to ride his own pony, while Charlotte helped by offering enthusiastic advice from the fence rail. Thomas slept peacefully in her arms, his tiny hand clutching her finger. The sound of an approaching wagon drew her attention. Mrs. Foster waved as she returned from town with mail and supplies. At 62, she remained a beloved part of their household, more grandmother than employee to the Ingram children. "Letters today," Mrs. Foster announced, climbing down carefully with Quinn's assistance. "Including one from Philadelphia for you, Mrs. Ingram." Lillian's heart stuttered momentarily before she recognized the handwriting, not Edward's, but her old friend Margaret's. Edward had never contacted them again after that confrontation in Tonopah, though occasional news reached them through Margaret's letters. According to her latest correspondence, Edward had finally married a wealthy widow nearly twice his age, a match based entirely on financial convenience. "Good news?" Quinn asked later that evening as they sat together on the porch swing, the children finally asleep after much negotiation and several bedtime stories. "Margaret writes that Edward has lost most of his new wife's fortune in bad investments," Lillian replied. "They've had to sell the Philadelphia house." Quinn's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Does that trouble you?" Lillian shook her head. "Not at all. It's just strange to think about how differently my life could have turned out." She leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid warmth. "If I hadn't found your advertisement, if I hadn't been brave enough to leave." "But you were brave," Quinn said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "The bravest woman I've ever known." Lillian smiled, thinking of the frightened, bruised young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach 5 years ago and the confident, happy wife and mother she had become. "We've been fortunate," she said. "We've made our fortune," Quinn corrected her. "Not in money, though we've done well enough there. But in this," he gestured toward their home, where their children slept safely in what we've built together. The desert night settled around them, stars appearing in the vast Nevada sky. From the barn came the soft nickering of horses, while the distant lowing of cattle drifted on the evening breeze. These sounds, once strange to Lillian, had become the beloved soundtrack of her life. "You ever regret answering my advertisement?" Quinn asked suddenly. "Taking a chance on a stranger?" Lillian turned in his arms, studying the face she had come to love so deeply, the lines at his eyes deeper now, silver threading through the light brown at his temples, but the blue eyes still as kind and steady as the day they first met. "Never," she said truthfully. "Not for a single moment," Quinn smiled, drawing her closer. "Then we are both fortunate indeed." As they sat together in the quiet Nevada evening, Lillian thought about the strange, winding path that had brought her to this place, from the refined parlors of Philadelphia to a cattle ranch outside Tonopah, from a frightened, battered young woman to a confident wife and mother. The bruises that had once marked her face had long since faded, but Quinn's whispered promise remained, fulfilled every day in 1,000 small ways. "No one hurts what's mine." In the distance, a coyote called to the rising moon, its haunting cry echoing across the valley that had become Lillian's true home, not because of the land or the house, but because of the man beside her, who had seen beyond her bruises to the woman she could become, who had offered protection when she needed it most and love when she was finally ready to receive it. And that, Lillian knew, was the greatest fortune of all.